Okay, I am going to talk about my faith today. The reason I'm going to talk about faith is because what my faith happens to be, or what I believe, is because some people wonder what path they should take in life. What's the right way to go? What is the wrong way to go? And how does my faith work, and what is it? Okay, basically, I can summarize it like this. Faith is developed based on trust. You trust that the water's going to be clean, then you'll drink it, You trust that water, if it's dirty, it's not going to work. So no one can drink dirty water and expect to live very long. So you want to find the cleanest, most purest water that you can find. And that's kind of the way my faith is. Basically, it's a childlike faith, essentially. When I was age 0 to 12, I couldn't make a whole lot of just choices for myself. I couldn't choose what clubs or what type of family events I would go to or not go to, not attend, and things like that. I couldn't choose what church things I would go to or not go to. Those were all decided for me before the age of 12. Also, I couldn't choose who my relatives were before the age of 12. I couldn't choose my siblings. I couldn't choose my cousins. I couldn't choose my aunts, my uncles, all those things. Those are all just given to me before the age of 12. Anyhow, this family is important because, guess what? I'm mostly Norwegian, but extended family could have many different heritages and nationalities. Most of it's probably Norwegian, but there's other things in there as well, including anything from the Middle East. And when you get into the Middle Eastern heritages business, then you start understanding why Jesus was specifically a Jewish man. And the Jewish people are obviously very Middle Eastern. Anyhow, so this doesn't distinguish me any differently from anyone else in the United States or anywhere else. It goes back to the story of the Tower of Babel. We don't know the exact language of the Tower of Babel, but we do know that there might be evidence that they might have spoken Greek or Hebrew or something of that sort before the Tower of Babel. If you go into the Bible, you'll find that story, so I encourage you to look that up and determine what does that mean. And if you look at the different ethnicities of different people and family groups around the world, in some way, it appears that many people appear somehow connected to people from the Middle East, from the Tower of Babel, basically. So I am no different than anybody else. Native Americans can sometimes look Middle Eastern if you give them the right type of dress and appearance and haircut. You can't tell the difference sometimes. It's just a funny thing that happens. Anyway, so after the Tower of Babel, languages obviously were different. They might have changed a little bit. Maybe the Latin languages started to develop a little bit differently, like the Spanish and the French. I don't know exactly how the languages were branched out into different parts and pieces after the Tower of Babel. All I know in the Bible story is it says that they did. So, our DNA records and our language records might be a little bit different in some ways or another. Some of us might have a little Native American heritage. That was a totally different language than the Latin languages. That can affect faith as well. What languages you spoke. I spoke English, which is a Latin language. Anyway, so on into DNA tests. Can that affect faith? Yes, in some ways it can. Especially if you're Jewish, you will know that anti-Semitism is very real, and it was prevalent in history, and it continues even to this day in certain areas and among certain people groups and people situations. They don't understand why people do the things that they do and things of that sort. So DNA tests can reveal some things. And my children happen to have a DNA test, and they are cousins to practically every nationality listed on the DNA heritage test. At least one individual from every nationality. So that can even affect faith. What is your heritage? What is your DNA? Okay, then my spouse. He's my spouse. He was supposed to not exist. He's supposed to be non-existent. He's one of those children born into out-of-wedlock home. He was born under a condition that was not so good, like infidelity. It had all sorts of stuff in his history that would determine that he shouldn't be alive, including the teenage mother condition, poverty, things like that. But guess what? He is alive. He is alive today. His life was not stopped before it was born. Same with Jesus. His condition should not have existed. King Herod didn't even like him. So there's just different circumstances where a child is brought into this world and they're not liked. But because of that, it doesn't mean that every human being is wrong or bad for existing. It means that we are all created in his image. Perfect in his image, his likeness, for his glory, and for his redeeming power. Okay? So my spouse is unique in that way. And if you're not careful about judging people outwardly, judging people by their appearance, some people might even think he looks like he's Jewish or something Middle Eastern, but he's actually has Native American heritage. So that can kind of affect faith as well. Simple little Native American thing can affect faith. So, getting into the Native American issue, what was the boarding school era? That was when Christianity was forced upon the Native American tribes. They were forced not to abide by certain ways of life that they had for thousands of years. And then all of a sudden, this sort of Catholicism came along, and turns out that they were persecuted pretty severely. Because of that, I simply don't follow certain sorts of Christian faith, even though they claim Christianity. I can only follow Christian beliefs that are based upon the Bible. They are based upon being born again. They're based on redeeming power. I cannot follow certain sorts of Christian beliefs that don't believe that way. Anyway, moving on. So, considering my spouse, considering myself, considering family members, every single person in family and in my marriage condition, myself, my spouse, my children, everybody has exactly one mother and one father, biologically speaking. This is obviously a scientific evidence, but everyone wants to distort it and call it what it is and say, oh, some men are more this way or that way, or women are this way or that way. But the reality is that every single human being that has a heartbeat on this earth has exactly one mother and one father, biologically speaking. So my faith is based on a basic scientific biology, law-driven science. No human being would exist on this earth without proper gravity conditions. I am 99.9% sure that nobody was born on the moon. No human being can be gestated in a woman's womb without proper gravitational conditions, things of that sort. No human being can exist on this earth without clean water. Things of just basic truths, basic science. That's another part of my faith, really. Okay. Now, it says in the Bible that it's an abomination to deviate from the orders of creation, Deuteronomy 22:5. So, if you're trying to deviate from truth, you're going to end up with trouble. So, what does Deuteronomy 22:5 say anyway? It says, just a minute, the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are an abomination unto the Lord thy God. So we should always pay attention to the orders of creation, Adam and Eve conditions. Don't assume that men can do what women can do. Don't assume that women can do what men can do. Even though, yes, sometimes women can be stronger than men and have more intellectual strength than some men. And some men can do better at washing the dishes than some women. But reality is that should not deviate from the orders of creation, or you're going to end up with trouble. It will spew out some problems. So that's part of my faith as well. Okay. So, what is another thing that's part of my faith? The issues of Amalek. If you look that up, it says that he encourages doubt. Doubt is a bad thing. And we should always encourage people to have faith and trust instead. So I want to let you go with that. Okay, I'm going to continue on with discussing my faith. I was cut off at the end, and I was studying Amalek, and it was explaining Amalek at the end. But now I'm going to continue on with Amalek. Anyway, Amalek wasn't such a good guy. Amalek did not like Israel. They had a problem with Israel. And it says in the Bible many different things about Amalek. They fought with Israel a lot. Exodus 17:8. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Moses fought with him. Moses had to fight with Amalek. Okay, and every time they had faith, they were able to overcome Amalek. So Amalek keeps coming along, and he's nasty. It says, for he said, because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. In Deuteronomy 25:17, it describes what kind of things did they do to cause this problem. So, Deuteronomy 25:17. Okay, it says, they would remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way, when you were come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way, and smote hindmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest from all thine enemies round about in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, thou shalt not forget it. Essentially, Amalek took the weakest people. He didn't give them water, he didn't give them food, he made it harder and harder, and he tried to annihilate the people that were truly weak, physically weak, among the Israelites. He is nasty. We need faith to overcome the Amaleks of our life. The Israelites need faith to overcome them to this day. Jewish people need to have the faith in order to overcome Amalek. Okay? Essentially, Amalek has a cold heart. The only way to overcome that cold heart is by the Word. There's no political trick to it, just the Word. So that's part of my faith. I believe that if you know the Word, you believe the Word, you use the Word accordingly, you'll be able to overcome that cold heart that Amalek had. Instead of seeing the weary people in life, in person, face to face, online, offline, wherever. If you believe the word, you can overcome the Amaleks of our life. They're the scammers of our life. They're awful, these Amaleks. They're the abusers. They're the users. They don't care. So we need to have faith to overcome that. What type of Bible version would you recommend to overcome the Amaleks of our life? I don't really have a particularly, I don't feel like I'm driven entirely by Bible version, but I do believe that it's good to have a select Bible version among a certain people group based on the language they use. For that instance, I believe the King James Version is perfect for the English language. You can understand the basics of the Bible, biblical-based faith from the King James Version. It's not an archaic or ancient language, or it's not an old language. It's a usable language. If you know the King James Version language, and you understand it, you're a pretty intelligent person as far as I'm concerned. It's also, if you know Hebrew, even better. You'll know what we know how the Bible fits itself together. Read Psalm 119 in the King James Version, you'll find all the Hebrew alphabet letters. So that tells us that the Hebrew language was a part of the Bible. And the Hebrew language is really no different than any other language. Like learning, if you don't know Spanish that well, it's like learning Spanish. It's very, very much a useful language to bring forth the gospel. Okay. Reading patterns. What type of reading patterns do I use? Essentially, each day I try to read about 5 Psalms and 1 Proverb, based on what day of the month it happens to be. I do this because the more I know in the Psalms and the Proverbs, the more I can identify good and bad within humanity. The Amaleks, these Amaleks that want to destroy and eliminate the weak people of our society, whether it's children, whether it's injured people, whatever the case happens to be. I read the Psalms and the Proverbs so I can help identify those weaknesses in people that I care about and people that I don't know very well. I read those every day. I also read Old Testament passages, New Testament passages, and Gospel. I try to read a certain amount each week. That helps me know if my faith is grounded in the truth, and I read commentaries to help me understand what I'm reading sometimes as well. Okay, so when I grew up, I was around Anabaptists. I was friends with them. My relatives were Anabaptists a little bit. And so I know what the Anabaptist faith is like. It's very simple. You basically just choose the basics of life. You choose the basic, clean water of life. You overcome the burdens of another. That's the Anabaptist. You live a plain, decent, approachable, clean life. Okay, that's Anabaptist. Also, there's Baptists. Those I found in the public school. I was before the age of 12. I couldn't choose my education, so I went to public school. There were a lot of Baptist influences there. That kind of had a little bit of influence on me. And I was around a lot of Lutheran and Catholicism. My parents grew up around that, so that's what they brought me up with, is Lutheran and Catholicism. I currently do not follow those Lutheran and Catholicism paths because they're too opposed to the Scripture, instead of seeing the Scripture as useful to help overcome those Amaleks, so to speak. They don't see that the value is in the Scripture to help. Okay. When I got out of, I married and on my own, and I was over the age of 20, I followed after Independent Baptist faith a little bit. I listened to some of their teachings, I listened to King James Version teachings, and I thought a lot of them are really good. And they are. And they show you how the Bible is useful in life. I cannot really go against what they're saying, and I believe that they're truthful. Patriarchy is not the bad guy. It really isn't. Patriarchy helps you overcome the Amaleks if it's applied appropriately. Okay? So a lot of Anabaptists or Independent Baptists believe that way. So that's one thing that I would consider okay as far as a belief. And I followed that a little bit. But because I know Hebrew as a language, I know someone who lives in Israel, I have relatives who have some Middle Eastern heritages and things of that sort, I decided to follow Messianic and Hebrew roots faith. Not because I think it's better than the other faiths that I grew up around or was influenced by, but because I believe it's the root of the tree. I feel it when I attend a Messianic service. I feel like his support is there. The support beam is there. It's the root of the tree. It cannot be moved. It's a solid ground. That's why I follow along with Messianic and Hebrew roots types teaching, especially like the teachings, the commentaries. I can't always understand the holidays so much and how that all fits together, what's the socially appropriate thing for this or that. I can follow along with believing that you should rest on a Sabbath day, but I can't always follow every little reconstruction of the Passover or something like that. But I do believe in listening to the teachings and things of that sort. Anyway, what about secular life? For me, I believe that you should develop your talents as well as you can. Just a general secular way. You develop your musical skills the best that you can. Develop your art skills. Develop your cooking skills. Develop your physical fitness skills. Develop the general secular skills to the best of your ability. Clean your house the best that you can. Do your best. Do thy best. Don't try to be a slough. Don't try to sit and idle. Just simply do your best. If you have social skills that are going to encourage humanity, do your best. What about common political themes like pro-life and pro-choice or political themes? You know what? And my perspective of that is you should not be deviating from the orders of creation. What does that mean? Revelation 21:8 will describe what happens and what types of people have deviated from the orders of creation. Okay, I'm running out of time on this recording, so I'm going to continue on with the next. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to explain Revelation 21:8. That explains the effects and the results and the types of people that have deviated from the orders of creation. Essentially, they're going back to the way that Adam and Eve shouldn't have been. They have not been fully redeemed, these people. So, Revelation 21:8 says, "But the fearful." So, should I be fearful? Should I overcome that fear? Yes. By faith, I will overcome fear. Unbelieving. Do I want to be unbelieving in Jesus and Christ and Yeshua and his redemption? No, I want to overcome that. And the abominable. Abominable is just kind of being gross and gaudy and disgusting and detestable, dirty. Do I need to overcome that? Yes, I need to have more cleanliness in my life and my way of going about life in general. The murders. There's all types of murderings around, and just Jesus himself says if you hate someone in your heart, you're already a murderer. So, by faith, I have belief that when I follow the word, I can overcome those types of things. Even abortion is a type of murder, so that's where it's going back to pro-life and pro-choice. Is abortion a murder? Yes, according to Scripture, it definitely is, because pregnancies are hard to develop. They're hard to come by. They don't just come out of nowhere. So when a child in the womb is not loved, neither is anybody else, because life is difficult to manage, maintain. And whoremongers, okay? Messing around, doing this and that with your body, assuming that you can just do whatever. Yep. By faith in Jesus, I believe that he helps overcome those sins and problems in the sexual impurity department. Men and women, nobody's born that way. It's just that he has the ability to help us overcome those things. Sorcerers, well, there's certain types of poisons and drugs and ideas and manipulations that men produce, witchcrafts and this and that, magical powers, but really, we don't need those things. We need his redemption, most of all. Yes, you can use herbs if you need them. Yes, you can use medical therapies, but if it's a power of making more money off of something that is really truly necessary for the truly weak, like the Amaleks of this world do not truly want to help the weak and the feeble people of this world. They want it all for their own selfishness. So, the idolatry. By faith, I have belief that you can overcome any sorts of idolatry, worshiping of something other than Christ. Yes, there are wonderful singers and dancers and talented people here and there. And some people even idolize their own family, which Jesus himself doesn't even want us to love our own mother and father and sisters and brothers more than him. So we need to overcome all sorts of idolatry. And liars? Yeah, if you're lying in order to get your way, to go your way, and to believe things about others that are not true, you're part of the liars group, and you don't want that. You want the truth. And he is the way, the truth, and the life. So, basically, in Revelation 21:8, it describes how humanity has deviated from the orders of creation. And when you deviate from the orders of creation, you become like Amalek, the cold-hearted. You aren't a part of his glory. You're not a part of his plan. So that's part of my faith. It's to be a part of his plan, his glory, his power. I could not do it on my own. I simply could not. I need to feel his redemption in order to move forward. I need to know and trust that he is truly there to help me keep going in that way. There's other general Bible verses that are part of my faith, just like anyone else who's a believer, a biblical believer. Love covers a multitude of sin. The chapter 13, love is our 1 Corinthians love chapter. Love is patient, kind. Okay. The Sermon on the Mount, I believe in the Sermon on the Mount. Should follow that. I'm just like any other Bible believer. It's just that I just follow certain things a little bit differently than others. I have different experiences than others. What about my intellectual skills? I have a little bit of bachelor's education. I wouldn't mind going to get a master's education, but you know what? It costs money to get master's degrees. And I just don't feel like getting it right now. I don't think I need it. Instead, I need to know the Word. That's my time in life, okay? Just to know his Word and trust that everything is okay and everything is going according to his plan. The more I know his Word, the more I can meditate upon that and just generally believe and share good with those who need it most. That's part of my faith. And I hope that you can find hope in that type of faith as well. And I hope that you look at your history and see if this is the type of faith that belongs with you. If you don't know for sure, you can just try giving to people. Just start giving to those truly in need. Try a specific organization that helps a minority group that needs help. I mean, that can kind of open up the door a little bit, because we're all descendants from the Tower of Babel, really. We all have little bits of differences here or there. But when you are opening up the door to helping those in need, you're saying, okay, my God can overcome their burdens, and I can trust him in that. So just consider that, and you can meditate on the word to help you know what the evils are that they are facing, and you can be a part of his plan to help overcome the bad stuff in this world, to blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. Thank you, and have a good day.